Zitlali's Papa's Folktale, The Deepest, Most Magical Forest. This happened a long, long time ago, Zitlali. It happened to the grandfather of my grandfather, or maybe even his grandfather. One night, when he was a tiny baby, his mother wrapped him in 3 blankets and laid him in a clearing in the deepest, most magical forest. The forest where one must never cut firewood because of the tree spirits, where one must never pick berries because of the plant spirits, where one must never hunt because of the animal spirits. But this baby's mother was special. She was a healer. She asked the spirits permission to enter the forest, so they let her gather healing herbs. Always she thanked them. Tonight she had come to discover her child's spirit animal. She stayed hidden in the trees, watching, waiting for her son's creature to come. At dawn, a dove landed near the baby's head. His mother thought, maybe his animal is a bird. Then he can fly over his troubles. But the dove moved on. Then a small lizard crept near the baby's feet. Maybe his animal is a lizard, thought his mother. Then he will be stealthy and agile. But the lizard moved on. And then, just as the sun peeked over the mountaintops, a young deer wobbled into the clearing. Slowly, step by step, the fawn walked to the baby. For a long time, the fawn looked into the baby's eyes. The baby looked back. The fawn's long tongue reached out and licked the baby's face. The baby smiled. The fawn smiled. Finally, the fawn walked away. That was when the baby's mother noticed the pattern of white spots on the fawn's back, how it echoed the odd birthmark on her son's back. She picked him up and kissed him and whispered thanks and headed home. She smiled the whole way, happy that her son's spirit animal was the swiftest, most graceful, most noble creature of the forest. Sure enough, the baby grew into a boy who could outrun anyone, even the fastest man. When he ran uphill, it was as though he was running downhill. When he ran downhill, it was as though he was flying. But since he was the best at running, the boy wanted to be the best at everything. The best tree climber, the best whistler, the best hunter. There was a problem with being the best hunter. His older brothers wouldn't even let him touch their rifles. "You're too little," they said when they left to go hunting. They made him stay home to help his mother. Patients came all day long, and she cured them with her herbs. The boy felt bored helping her. He whined, "I want to hunt and show the world that I am the best at everything." "It's true, you are a good runner," she said, "but that's thanks to your dear spirit. You must always be grateful for this gift." But the boy did not feel grateful. He felt only proud of himself. "I run fast because I'm the fastest," he said. "And if my brothers let me hunt, I'd be the best hunter, and then you'd see." His mother said, and went back to hanging up her herbs to dry. Very early one morning, while the stars were still out, even before his mother had woken up to start the tortillas and tea, the boy tiptoed outside with his oldest brother's rifle. He shivered in the darkness and put the heavy gun over his shoulder and walked over the hills and through the fields, headed straight for the deepest, most magical forest. The forest where one must never cut firewood because of the tree spirits, where one must never pick berries because of the plant spirits, where most of all, one must never hunt because of the animal spirits. The boy went there anyway. It was the only place where no one could see him. No one could see him because no one was brave enough to venture there. He thought, "I am the best and the bravest." And just as the sky was turning from the black of night to the blue of morning, he stepped into the deepest, most magical forest. Here the trees whispered, the plants murmured, the insects sang. If he listened carefully, he would have heard the warnings in their words, "You foolish boy, leave, 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 or else." But he didn't listen. He crept through the underbrush thinking, "I'm about to become the best hunter this pueblo has ever seen." The boy sat down and waited by a big tree at the edge of a clearing. After a while, he heard a movement. Into the meadow stepped a magnificent buck. It held its head high, and its antlers came to 4 points on each side, like a majestic crown. If the boy had looked closely, he might have noticed the animal's pattern of white spots, how it matched the strange birthmark on his own back, but he didn't notice. The boy stood up slowly, thinking about how big and impressed his brother's eyes would be when they saw him carrying this giant animal's head. He raised the gun to his shoulder, moved his eye to the sight, and pulled the trigger. So many things happened in that one terrible moment. The entire forest shook like thunder. The deer flew back in the air and landed with its leg collapsed beneath it. and the force from the gunshot launched the boy backward. He landed on something sharp, something that stabbed through his thigh, a spiked branch poking from a log like a knife. The buck limped away, blood streaming from its leg. The boy tried to stand up, but his leg didn't support him. It ached and burned. Blood gushed from the wound. He left the gun there and dragged himself toward home, crawling most of the way. Hours later, he made it to the kitchen door. His mother scooped him up and brought him inside. She cleaned his wound as he screamed in pain. "It pierced you to the bone," she said. "How did this happen, son?" "I woke up early to gather firewood," he lied, "and I tripped and fell." She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. 2 days later, the boy's wound was worse, pink and swollen, with red streaks running up and down his leg. He lay on his mat and shivered and sweated with fever. All night and all day his mother had been tending to him with her worried face. That afternoon, his brother said, "Where's my gun? It's been missing for 2 days." Their mother gave her wounded son a look of full questions. When the boy told her the truth, his words sounded far away, as though they came from another boy's mouth. That's how lost he was in fever and pain. "You shot a deer in the magical forest," his mother cried. She leapt up and threw food and blankets and pots and cups and herbs and matches into a bag. She hoisted her son onto her back and strapped him on with rope like a bundle of firewood. Then he headed to the deepest, most magical forest. Every step, every bounce, set more fire through the boy's leg, but he only whimpered. He was beyond words now, beyond crying. He drifted in and out of this world, so close to death. Inside the forest, the light was different. It was golden and spilled in ribbons through the leaves. Golden ribbons pooled on the forest floor. The boy wanted to let one of the golden ribbons pull him up and into heaven. But then his mother was pouring cold water on his face and saying, Where did you shoot this deer?" And the boy pointed to the clearing. It did not take long for his mother to find the buck curled up in a nest of grasses. It watched them come close. Its antlers no longer looked majestic. The creature was too weak to hold its head high. Its eyes looked as far away as the boy's. It moved its front legs a little, then gave up, resting its head on its back, licking its swollen wound. "Just as I thought," the boy's mother said, eyeing its white spots. "Your deer." And she laid the boy beside the animal. His mother collected wood and built a small fire and boiled water and threw in some herbs. She gave a cup to the deer, then a cup to the boy. She laid an herb-soaked cloth over the deer's wound and laid another one over the boy's. She fed her son and the buck the same food, fruits and berries and roasted mushrooms and boiled greens and nuts. She stroked her son's hair with one hand and the deer's fur with the other. She sang them songs in the languages of humans and in the languages of spirits. The boy did not know how long he was there with his mother and the deer. Days? Weeks? Little by little, his world became clearer. Every time the boy opened his eyes, he saw the buck's eyes looking into his. Its eyes grew bigger as the life came back into them. The boy felt as though he was looking into a mirror. The boy smiled. The deer smiled. Then one morning, the boy woke up and the deer was gone. Its spot in the grass was empty. The boy sat up and looked around just in time to see the flash of the white tail disappearing into the trees. The next day, the boy and his mother went home. For weeks he walked with a limp and a stick. Within months he was running, and after a year passed, he was the fastest runner in his pueblo once again. But it was different now. Now, every day, the boy ran along the edges of the deepest, most magical forest. He ran and felt his deer eyes watching the trees whiz by and felt his deer legs pounding the earth. He ran and ran, leaping over logs and fences. He became known as a protector of the forest. If anyone tried to enter, he would chase them, and always he would catch them. People said that when he ran, a handsome buck with giant antlers bounded alongside him just inside the forest shadows. Together they ran with their legs outstretched, the deer an echo of the boy, or maybe the boy an echo of the deer. Years passed, and the boy became an old man, and still he ran along the forest, although more slowly now. Sometimes he stopped to rest and told his tale to the children who gathered around him, and always, Zitlali, he ended with this: if you ever find yourself in the deepest, most magical forest, be kind to whatever creature you meet there, look into its eyes, and smile.